We're about to dive into one of the most famous texts ever written, the very first chapter of the Bible. But instead of just skimming the story you already know, we're going to explore a fascinating interpretation that suggests it's not just a creation account, but a hidden code with multiple layers of meaning. Everything kicks off right here, with this monumental opening line. It's a sentence that doesn't just start a book, it lays the foundation for an entire worldview. Everything that follows is built on this single, powerful declaration. So, what if this story is more than just a simple retelling of creation? The interpretation we're exploring today sees it as a text packed with symbolism and prophetic patterns. Which brings us to our central question: what secrets are just waiting to be discovered? First, let's do a quick refresher on the story we all know. It's a narrative of cosmic construction taking place over a highly structured week. This framework is absolutely crucial for understanding the deeper interpretations. We see the familiar 6 days, from the first spark of light to the creation of humankind. The story moves from formlessness to a world just teeming with life, each step building on the last. But according to the interpretation we're looking at, this structure is anything but random. Let's peel back that first layer. The first key discovery from this interpretation is that the opening line of Genesis is way more than a simple statement of fact. It's seen as the source of 3 fundamental spiritual pillars. The very idea that in the beginning God created is interpreted as the bedrock for faith, love, and hope. Let's break down how. First up, faith. The interpretation here is that if you can accept this first monumental miracle, that a creator purposefully brought the universe into existence, then believing in any other miracle becomes possible. It's the foundational act of trust. And this idea is echoed in other parts of the Bible. This quote from Hebrews suggests that faith isn't just blind belief. It's the very lens through which the act of creation is understood and comprehended. Next, love. Now, what's really interesting about this interpretation is the question, why create in the first place? An all-powerful, perfect being doesn't need anything. This approach argues that the only logical reason for creation was to express love, since love requires a relationship, someone or something to love. This famous verse is then seen not as an isolated event, but as the ultimate continuation of that initial creative act of love. The world's creation and the world's salvation are bookends of the same loving purpose. And finally, hope. If a loving creator is the author of life, then according to this view, death can't possibly be the final word. This belief in a purposeful beginning provides the basis for an eternal hope, the conviction that life has meaning that transcends its physical end. This idea of an ordered creation leads us to our next discovery, a powerful symbolic parallel. What if the creation of the world is also a metaphor for our own personal transformation? The text describes the early earth as formless and empty, with darkness over the surface of the deep. This state of chaos is interpreted as a mirror of a life that feels directionless, lived without a sense of purpose or spiritual clarity. And this illustrates the parallel brilliantly. The formless and empty world corresponds directly to a life of chaos. The darkness symbolizes spiritual ignorance. So, when God says, "Let there be light," it's not just about physical light, it's a metaphor for divine revelation bringing order and meaning to a chaotic life. Now for our third and most intricate discovery. This interpretation sees the 6 days of creation not just as a sequence of events, but as a symbolic blueprint, a prophetic pattern for the entire story of salvation. The crucial point here is that the order of creation isn't considered arbitrary. Instead, each day is thought to correspond to a specific theological step in God's plan for humanity, centered around the figure of Jesus, or Yeshua, which is his Hebrew name. Let's walk through this pattern. Day 1, light, is a parallel to Jesus being called the light of the world. Day 2's separation of heavens and earth symbolizes that the kingdom of God is distinct from the earthly world. Day 3, with its seeds and fruit, reflects the principle of death and resurrection. The celestial bodies of Day 4 are seen as signs for the biblical feasts, which in turn outline the story of salvation. The fish and birds of Day 5, which fill the world, symbolize the spreading of the message. And finally, Day 6, the creation of human beings in God's image, points to the ultimate goal, for believers to be conformed to the image of the Son. As you can see, it forms a complete symbolic map. This brings us to the grand finale of Creation Week, where all of these threads, the literal, the personal, and the prophetic, come together in one final, powerful declaration. After each day, God says his work is good, But on the sixth day, after creating humanity and completing the entire structure, the verdict gets an upgrade. It wasn't just good, it was very good. This is seen as a stamp of ultimate purpose and perfection on the entire plan. So, to recap our journey through this text, we've seen Genesis 1 interpreted as the foundation of faith, love, and hope, as a metaphor for the personal transformation from chaos to order, and as a detailed prophetic blueprint for the story of salvation. It all culminates in the conviction that the original design was and is very good. And that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If we view the creation story through this lens, not as a scientific account, but as an intentional, patterned, and loving act, how does that change our perception of the world and our place in it? It suggests that from the very first moment, the universe was infused with purpose. Thanks for exploring this hidden code with us.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are getting into a really foundational text. I mean, maybe the foundational text for Western civilization. The first chapter of Genesis.
And we're not just reading it as a creation story. Our sources treat this as a dense theological blueprint.
Right. So for you, the curious learner, our mission here is to unpack how this story, which you probably already know on some level, is really interpreted as a source of these core eternal truths.
Exactly. We're looking for the framework that's embedded in the text itself, the foundations of faith, hope, and love.
And before we even get to verse 1, our source material actually grounds this whole thing in a command from Deuteronomy. It's called the most important commandment.
Listen, Israel, the Lord is our God, only the Lord. Love the Lord your God with your whole heart, soul, and strength.
But it's what comes after that that's so important for our purposes here.
Yes, the mandate attached to it. It's not enough to just believe it. The instruction is to repeat these commands constantly. When you're talking, at home, on the road.
When you lie down, when you get up, it's constant.
It is. And the stated goal of studying Genesis 1 this way is to literally fulfill that, to give you something that gives reason to your day and peace to your night. It turns study into an active devotion.
That's a perfect way to frame it. So let's establish the structure of the narrative itself. Let's walk through the 6 days, focusing on the order that's being established.
Okay. So we start with raw potential. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But the sources really emphasize the state of things before the work begins.
Formless and empty.
Formless, empty, darkness over the deep waters. But the Spirit of God is moving. So you have chaos and potential just coexisting.
And then the work starts. The deliberate ordering.
Day 1.
God says, let there be light. And that very first act is one of separation.
Exactly. Light from darkness, day from night. It's not just about illumination, it's about creating boundaries. That's the key.
Then on day 2, another boundary.
A vertical one this time. God creates this space, this expanse, the sky, and it separates the waters below from the waters above.
Okay, so day 3, we have another separation, but this time it's about substance, right?
Right. The waters pull back, and dry ground appears. Earth, and the waters get their name, seas. But day 3 has a second act.
The earth immediately starts producing.
Immediately. Vegetation, plants with seeds, fruit trees, and the key phrase is each producing its own kind. Self-sustaining reproductive life is now in place.
You can see the system being built. First, the elements, light, air, water, land. Then the energy system, the food source.
All of it set up before any mobile, complex life shows up. It's incredibly systematic.
Which brings us to day 4. We're back to the heavens, but now for a different function.
Yes, now it's about time. The lights appear in the sky to separate day from night, sure, but also to mark seasons, days, and years.
The sun, the moon, the stars. One to govern the day, one for the night.
It's a celestial clock. The framework is now fully in place.
So the environment is ready. Day 5.
And now it can be filled. The waters swarm with life, the skies fill with birds, and they get the first blessing.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Proliferation is now the mandate for life.
Which culminates on day 6. The land animals appear.
Domestic, wild, all of them. But that's just the warm-up for the main event of day 6.
The crescendo, the creation of humanity.
And the language shifts. It becomes more personal. Let us make human beings in our image to be like us.
Created male and female and given a blessing and a job.
Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and govern, to reign over the whole created order.
And their food is provided, plants, fruit, Everything is anticipated.
Which leads to that final concluding assessment of the entire week. God looks at everything and sees that it was.
Very good.
Not just good, very good, perfect, complete, fulfilling its purpose. And that verdict right there is our pivot point into the deeper meaning.
Okay, so this is Discovery 1, the foundation of faith, love, and hope.
And it starts with that very first sentence. In the beginning, God created. The source calls this the greatest source of faith.
Why that sentence specifically? Why is that the miracle of miracles?
The argument is, well, if you can believe that one, sweeping miracle, that everything was created intentionally from nothing, then any other miracle in the text becomes philosophically much easier to accept.
I see. It sets the baseline. It eliminates the idea that existence is just a random accident.
Exactly. Faith becomes this confidence that you're part of an eternal purpose, not just a blind evolutionary process. It's the conviction of what's not seen.
So it establishes trust in the author before you even get into the plot. That makes sense. But how does this relate to love? If God is perfect and complete, why create it all?
That's the paradox the source tackles. It says love is the only reason. A perfect, complete creator needs nothing. Not glory, not praise. So creation can't be a transaction to get something he lacks.
Oh, why do it?
Because love, by its very nature, has to be given. It's relational. It can't exist in a vacuum. The creation provided what the source calls, and this is a fascinating term, depositary vessels for this love.
Depositary vessels. So containers.
Basically, yes. Recipients designed to hold and reflect that love. It makes creation an act of giving, not an act of need. It's all about the outward flow of love.
Which requires a relationship. It wasn't about God needing something back. It was about love needing an outlet.
Precisely. And that flows right into the third pillar, hope.
Okay, so if creation was this act of perfect love, intended to be very good, how does something like death fit in?
The sources are clear that death came from disobedience. But the foundation of hope is that this was foreseen. The argument is that a plan for forgiveness, for reconciliation, for eternal life, that was already in place.
Before the fall even happened.
That's what the source asserts. Creation was for eternal delight, and hope is the guarantee that this ultimate purpose remains intact through that pre-planned path. Faith takes away the fear of death, and hope gives you the expectation of that eternal purpose.
Wow. That is an enormous amount of theological weight to put on just the first few verses.
It is. It frames everything that follows.
Okay, let's transition then. Let's get into the more symbolic layers here. This brings us to Discovery 2, chaos, order, and salvation patterns.
Right, so we have to go back to Genesis 1, verse 2. The earth was disordered and empty with darkness. But there's a tension there, because the prophet Isaiah says that God created the world to be inhabited, not for it to be an empty place of chaos.
So it was intended for order, but it began in chaos. How do the sources square that?
They see it as a pattern, a recurring pattern of divine intervention. What God does on day one, bringing light and order, is a blueprint for what he does in a person's life.
How so?
Well, darkness and shadows in these texts symbolize ignorance, disorder, a lack of divine revelation. So that initial state of the earth is seen as a metaphor for a life without direction.
Chaos and emptiness.
Exactly. So when God's light shines into that life, when that revelation is received, that is your personal day one. It's the beginning of truly living. You're separating the light of understanding from the darkness of ignorance.
That's powerful. It makes the creation story deeply personal.
And that idea opens the door to the biggest interpretive leap, which is Discovery 3. Seeing the 6 days as a pattern for the entire history of salvation through Yeshua or Jesus.
Okay, so this completely reframes the timeline. We're not talking about a cosmological calendar anymore.
Not at all. Now it's a redemptive calendar.
So how does that break down day by day?
Okay, so day one, the light. This is seen as the beginning of spiritual life, directly pointing to Jesus as the light of the world. Following him means you no longer walk in spiritual darkness.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So day 2, the separation.
The physical separation of the waters above and below now symbolizes a spiritual separation. Once you receive the light, your kingdom, your focus becomes, well, not of this world. You separate heavenly priorities from earthly ones.
Okay. Day 3, seeds and fruit. This seems very thematic.
Highly. This is the principle of sowing and harvesting, of death and resurrection. It's about becoming spiritually productive, bearing fruit 30, 60, or 100-fold. It's about staying connected to the vine.
And then day 4, the signs and festivities. This one seems like a bigger leap. How do the sun and moon connect to salvation?
This is fascinating. The source argues they were put there to mark seasons, yes, but specifically to mark the biblical festivals,
The festivals, why are they so important?
because they're seen as prophetic appointments. They are dates on the divine calendar that outline the planned rescue of humanity. The cosmos itself is a clock, ticking towards key redemptive events.
So the very structure of the universe is pointing to this plan.
That's the interpretation. Then you get to day 5, fish and birds. The waters and skies are teeming with life.
How does that fit the pattern?
It's seen as a symbol for the diffusion of the message. The abundance of the miraculous catch is a direct analogy for spreading the gospel message in the latter days. It's about proliferation.
And that leaves the final day, day 6, man.
This is the culmination. The final stage of the redemptive pattern is about humans being conformed to the ultimate image, the image of the Son of Man. It's about reaching that state of perfected, purposeful humanity.
What's really striking is how this interpretation synthesizes everything. It takes this simple, ancient story and uses its 6-day structure as a framework for these huge theological ideas that span the entire biblical canon.
Exactly. It shows that the text isn't just a historical account. It's seen as having this incredible structural and predictive depth, and that's what provides the ultimate conviction. Genesis 1 is a source of faith, hope, and love that leads to one conclusion.
That everything God created is good in great measure.
Yes, even in the midst of personal chaos, the foundational text says that nothing is outside of divine control.
And that when everything has fulfilled its purpose, the final verdict will be that everything has been good in great measure. That really brings this deep dive right back to you, the listener.
Because understanding this isn't just an academic exercise. It's meant to be operational. It establishes a worldview built on purpose, order, and reconciliation.
So the source material ends with this idea of a new beginning. If the foundational story of everything starts with moving from darkness, from disorder and emptiness, into light and purpose, what does that concept of a deliberate, ordered new beginning imply for how you approach the chaos in your own life?
How does this framework change your starting point for a new challenge or for new knowledge? Something to think about as you reflect on the purpose and pattern found in these ancient lines. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.